not know about him. We have a special show in store today. We have 4 different guests, and I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves. We have Joyce Ladner, who many of you know, Gloria Clark, Roy DeBerry, and Zakaria, a young lady. She's going to, 16-year-old. She's going to help me co-host this show. But let's start with Joyce. Joyce, are you with us? If Joyce is not yet on, perhaps the engineer could call her. Joyce Ladner, as many of you know, her sister Dory. You there, Joyce?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We're just introducing you. Can you just give a brief introduction of you? Of course, you're native from Mississippi. You worked with Medgar Evers, was a mentor. Just for listeners who don't know, and we'll come back to you in a minute, to tell us in one sentence or two about you.
I grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I was active in the civil rights movement from the time I was fairly young. I met Medgar Evers. I first saw him when I was about 11, 12 years old at a conference. Then I met him in 1959 when he came to my hometown.
Okay. Okay, Joyce, and we're gonna Joyce, we're gonna come back to you in a minute. There's just a brief introduction of who we have, and then you'll be the first one to really share. So let's jump to Roy DeBerry. Welcome, Roy. Can you just share in a sentence or two who you are and what you'll be talking about with us soon?
Thank you, Joni. I'm Roy DeBerry. I live in Oxford, Mississippi. I grew up in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and probably talking about the play that we did about Medgar Evers in 1964.
Yes, we're going to be hearing about the play called Seeds of Freedom from 2 people who were involved in the play 61 years ago. So let's move to the next person who worked on that play, Gloria Clark. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your interest. In 1964, I was a first grade teacher in Massachusetts, where I grew up and lived. And the civil rights leaders from Mississippi got on TV and said, we need some teachers to come down here and teach in the freedom schools. And I said, well, I think that's me. And so I found a way to get to Mississippi with the New York City Teachers Union. They sent a bus down. We got a couple of days of training in Memphis, Tennessee. They put us on a bus and they started dropping us off. I was the first one with 4 or 5 New York City teachers. We were dropped off in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and that's where we started teaching in the freedom schools.
Okay, we'll be coming back to you and Roy soon. And our last but not least guest, and I'm going to see if she can help me co-host this show, Zakaria, a 16-year-old young lady who lives in Anacostia and just performed. She was just Fannie Lou Hammer on Juneteenth at the Kennedy Center. So Zakaria, welcome. Say a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Joni, for having me. Yes, hi, everyone. My name is Zakaria Manigault. I am 16 years old. I just recently performed Fannie Lou Hammer, Until I'm Free, with Children's Legacy Theater at the Kennedy Center. I have always been I've always had a very deep love of theater. So being able to have that experience with Miss Jackie Carter has been nothing but amazing. And I am so thankful for Miss Joni for inviting me on the show.
And we're very excited to introduce you to our other guests and to our audience. And this won't be the last time you're going to be on with us. I must say that she did a magnificent job of playing Fannie Lou Hammer, and she's going to learn today Fannie Lou Hammer's connection with Medgar Evers. I would have never have known that she was 16 years old. She really brought the house down with Fannie Lou Hammer. So, with that said, and Zakaria, you can, as we're going to talk with Joyce Ladner first, and you can jump in with Joyce with some questions as she shares. So, Joyce, let's go back to your what you were sharing about your growing up in Mississippi, and maybe take it from where you were starting to tell us how you met MEDGAR Evers. We have about 10 minutes for you here.
You talking to me?
Yes. Joyce, we have about 10 minutes now for you to share.
Okay.
If you want to start with when you met MEDGAR or anything you'd like to start with.
Yes. When we were about, my sister Dora and I were about 10, 11 years old. We went with a family friend to Jackson to a statewide NAACP meeting. And that was the first time I saw MEDGAR Evers. But in 1959, we had organized an NAACP youth chapter in Hattiesburg. And I wrote to him as at the behest of the group to ask if he could come to Hattiesburg for our next meeting. I have correspondence between us, but he said he couldn't come. They gave him an alternative date, and he showed up. So from that was 1959. And from then on, I knew him. In the fall of 60, we went to Jackson State College, and his office in the Masonic Temple was down the street from the college. So we used to go to his office about once a week on Wednesday afternoons during free period. And we would talk to him about Negro rights, as we called them, what he was doing throughout the state of Mississippi, and anything of interest to us. So he would tell us about his visits to different towns and the youth chapters and what they were doing, as well as the adult chapters. So in the spring of 61, on one of our visits, he told us, he said, I have to tell you a secret. You must keep it to yourselves. But there's going to be a sit-in in Jackson. And when the time comes, I'll let you know what I want you all to do. So the date, on a visit to his office, he told us the date that was going to occur, and that he wanted us to organize a sympathy protest when the students at Tougaloo College would be locked up in jail. And they went to the White Library, and the police were called, and they were arrested. That evening, a lot of students turned out for a prayer protest, and within minutes, President Jacob Reddick of the college came onto the campus, and he was in a frenzy, running from one group to the other, telling us to break this up. And he came upon my two roommates, Margaret and Eunice, and me, and he grabbed Eunice by the shoulder and knocked her to the ground. He called the cops. They came onto the campus and made us go back in our dorms. So that was my real interest. Anyway, the next day we were marching to the Jackson Hines County Courthouse, where the students were to be arraigned. And we got to a few blocks from the campus, and we met a roadblock. Police set off canisters of tear gas, even though I thought it was bullets, because it sounded like someone shooting bullets. And they established a roadblock, and they chased us. We couldn't go any further, so we ran. We scattered. I went down a side street, and this lady allowed me to stay in her house until things cooled down. Anyway, the police, President Reddick called for an early spring break. So the next day we all left campus. When we got back to campus after a week or so, the dean called my sister and me in and told us that we were being expelled at the end of the semester and we couldn't come back. So we were not to be outdone by him. One of us said, I don't care. We don't care. We hate this school. This school is more strict than our mother. Men and women are really can't go anywhere, can't do anything. And one of us said, and we're not coming. We don't want to come back to the school. We're going to transfer to Tougaloo College. Mind you, Tougaloo costs twice as much as Jackson State. We hadn't talked to our parents or anyone about transferring, but we were not to be outdone by him. And the very nerve of him, we said, the nerve of him to expel my roommate after he knocked her down. So that was the experience we had with Jackson State. But anyway, MEDGAR helped to arrange for us to get out to Tougaloo and to register and enroll and so on. And we remained fairly close with him from that point until his death.
Yes, and I know your sister saw him briefly before he was assassinated. But Joyce, perhaps you could share with people who may not know, including our 16-year-old young lady here, what would you say to her? And Zakaria, you can ask her yourself. But why should people today, young people, know about MEDGAR EVERS? What would you say to them that makes him really an important hero?
People should know about MEDGAR EVERS because he was the most courageous person I'd ever met, and he was selfless. He drove up and down those 2-lane highways of Mississippi at dark before there were 4 lanes, and he, going from one NAACP chapter to another, investigating one shooting or killing after another. He was totally committed to what he believed in. What he believed in was freedom and equality and the right to vote for Black people. He was the most selfless person one can imagine. So, he is one of the true heroes. I mean, I can't say enough about him, but he was an extraordinary person. Warm, and soft-spoken, very soft-spoken.
And Zakaria, you could jump in with a question if you have, but I imagine Zakaria may ask you, what was his role before he was killed? And perhaps you might say a word of his relation.
He was the field secretary, Mississippi field secretary for the NAACP. That meant that he was hired and paid by the NAACP to oversee all of the activities of the NAACP chapters. And that involved, as I said, investigating the beatings and the murders of Black people. It involved him standing up for the rights of Black people at a time when it was very, very difficult to do so. He was almost like a lone voice in a state that was sweltering with bigotry and violence. And the I guess I want to say and also a state that had systematic racial discrimination. The very foundation of the state was based on racism, and he was determined to dismantle it.
And Kari, do you have a quick question before we move on to our next guest in a moment?
Yes, I think I do have a question. I want to start off by saying that that's an amazing perspective. That's an amazing point of view from what she has gathered from who she known Medgar Evers as to be. I guess the one question I would have to ask would be, how has his person and his personality and the things that he did, how has that benefited the African American community till today?
Well, his work is in the history books. There are buildings named for him, schools, I think, and his life is taught in colleges and in high schools. His wife was determined that he would not be forgotten, so she spent a great deal of her life after his murder organizing, and she was chair of the NAACP for a number of years. His home, their home, is what is it? What?
A museum with the National Park Service, and
the National Park Service oversees it and keeps it up.
And I must say, Joyce, I didn't share this with you, but our friend Frank Smith, who was also a SNCC activist and the founder of the African American Civil War, shared with me yesterday that the National Park Service was told to leave Medgar Evers' home as the museum. So Frank was concerned about the future of that museum. So we will see, and people will have to stand up to really preserve that very cherished museum of Medgar Evers. This just happened the other day.
This government, the Trump administration, is trying to get rid of. They would call it DEI.
Yeah.
But Medgar's home, Medgar and Merle Evers' home, receives thousands of visitors every year. It's one of the landmark, and it's on the Mississippi Civil Rights Trail as well. So the people who,
yes.
Anyway, it would be a tragedy if it were no longer so.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to stand up and fight for it.
Yes, we will.
Yes. So that's Joyce Ladner. Many of our listeners know you, Joyce, and of course her sister, Dory, whose birthday was just last Saturday. We'll be going to be coming back to you again, Joyce, a little later in the hour. But now we want to introduce two very special guests. Roy DeBerry from Mississippi and Gloria Clark, and they're going to talk about a play that was, and anybody who's not speaking now, maybe put yourselves on mute.
Thank you.
A play that was done 61 years ago in 1964, 1 year after Medgar Evers was assassinated. These two people, I'm going to still call them young people. They were very young 61 years ago. They're going to tell us some of the story and the importance of that play. And Roy can jump in and tell us, start even with the name of the play and begin to tell the story.
Thank you, Joni. And also, I'm very pleased to be with Gloria. Also pleased to be with Zakara. Also pleased to be with Joyce. I've been with Joyce on one or two other kind of panels, and just it's just fascinating hearing her tell that personal story. I did not have the personal story because I did not meet MEDGAR before he was assassinated. I had heard about him, I had read about him, and the good work that he was doing. One of the things that struck me about, before I talk about the play, Joni, is this notion of courage and bravery, because that was so evident that what MEDGAR had been doing up in the Mississippi Delta. But not only that, but also he and his brother Charles growing up in Decatur, Mississippi, and seeing firsthand the kind of destruction, i.e. lynching, and then going off to the military and seeing certain things in the military, particularly in France, and coming back and saying, we just not going to take this anymore. That was not only true of MEDGAR, but that was true of a lot of veterans who decided to come back. Some didn't come back. With respect to, it's amazing that we call our play Seeds of Freedom. And one of the things that Joyce has talked about so far is how much MEDGAR wanted freedom and wanted to break this cycle of white supremacy in Mississippi. And that was what it was all about. And you're right, he was kind of a lone wolf for a long time. I got involved as a young person with Frank Smith initially there in Hollis Springs, but particularly during the summer of '64. And that was a summer that was called Freedom Summer, if you recall. And of course, prior to '64, '62 had happened when Jane Meredith had come. I mean, the troops had come through my town of Hollis Springs on the way to Oxford, Mississippi, to ensure that Jane Meredith, a Black student, had the right to attend a public university. Now, it's amazing. I didn't know this at the time, but I learned later that MEDGAR himself had tried to enroll much earlier at the university and had been turned down. And he also assisted in that process as the field secretary to help get MEDGAR into that university. So that summer, really for me, was about the freedom schools and about participating with all these wonderful people locally, but also people like Gloria and Aviva and others who came down to teach that summer. But not only just to teach, but to also help get people registered to vote, because that was the focus of Freedom Summer. And it's interesting, I think we were sitting around talking about what could we do since MEDGAR had been assassinated in '63 June, and it was the summer of '64. What could we do as young people, middle school kids and high school kids? And I think the idea came up about doing a play. And so we sat on the lawn there at Russ College with initially Debbie Flint, who is also one of the, like Gloria, one of the teachers from New York. And we pretty much improvised the play. The name came from Ernestine Evans, as she later became Ernestine Scott. And we were sitting around talking about what did that assassination mean to us? Was the idea of destroyed? Was the idea of freedom destroyed? Was the idea of the movement destroyed? And I think Ernestine articulated very powerfully to us as fellow classmates on that lawn that summer that no, he was dead physically, but he was not dead in so many ways. And this way that he was like a seed that would sprout and grow out. And so we came up with the name Seeds of Freedom, and then we just improvised and eventually put the play together, put the play on in Mississippi, starting at Rush and then Meridian, and then we took it to New York during the summer of '64. The inspiring thing to me was the first time we had done a play, and it gave us an opportunity as young people to feel that we were doing something concrete as a way not only to honor MEDGAR Evers, but to also have major kinds of discussions about what freedom meant to us, because the play is about articulating what each individual felt about freedom and the freedom movement. And so that became part of that play.
Wow, that's quite a story. Let's jump to Gloria Clark, and that was Roy DeBerry you just heard. And again, I'm going to ask soon Zakaria to jump in as well, since she was just in a play about Fannie Lou Hammer, playing Fannie Lou Hammer. But Gloria?
Yes, well, I met Roy in the summer of 1964, and he was very active in the freedom schools. And when the teacher who was working with them went back to teach in the schools in New York after they had rehearsed the Seeds of Freedom play, she asked me to follow up and to stay with the kids and to keep them rehearsing. And she was going to set up performances in New York. And that is exactly what happened. And rehearsing now, you have to understand, we're talking about the fall now of 1964, because she had gone back, but I stayed and I was in Mississippi until we went up to New York in December of 64 with 3 performances in New York. But it wasn't easy to keep the kids together, okay? And maybe, I don't know how much Roy knew about that, but I would have to go pick up a lot of students and bring them for rehearsals and go over the lines. And, you know, the way it was kind of put together in the summer was that you could improvise your role and you could add to it as you wanted to. So the idea was to keep that kind of creativity alive in the students and keep them involved and wanting to do this. I mean, and it was a long haul. You know, you guys had to rehearse, you know, for months.
Indeed.
And so finally, it was late December, and we all took a bus up to New York City. And I believe you had, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about your performances. You had 3 performances there. I know one was at the church, the Central Park Avenue Church, I believe, with Pete Seeger. That is the one that I remember. But I think you had others, and maybe you would like to talk a little bit about your experiences of going to New York to do the play.
Well, you must, Gloria, you're right. It was a whirlwind tour, by the way. And there was so much going on. I do remember the thing with Pete Seeger because he sang some of the freedom songs with us. And one of the things you mentioned about this whole improvisation thing was the fact that each student felt that he or she was a participant. And you're absolutely right. We had the liberty to improvise. And it was not typically the way a play is written, I would assume. That is to say, the playwright sits down and writes everything, and then you just produce what the playwright has done. In this sense, we were all playwrights because we were all developing the play there simultaneously and spontaneously. With respect to New York, in addition to the place where we put the play on, we also stayed with families in New York. James Stevenson and I stayed with Helen and Louis Silverstein, and Louis was one of the editors of the New York Times, and I think Helen at the time was doing some movies on her own, independent movies. And it's amazing because of that summer, we developed a lifelong relationship. Matter of fact, we stayed friends throughout my granddad's years, and later on, they passed away, but I'm still a friend with one of her daughters. I can't specifically remember the other 2 plays because it's been a long time. It was a whirlwind, but we had a chance to visit all over New York. I had a chance to visit with Harlem and also Roger Mudd, who was also at that time not an anchor, but a correspondent for CBS News, did interview some of us. I know he interviewed me, and they asked me about some of the things that I had been involved with in Mississippi, and specifically about why we had done the play. So we had a chance to talk about that on NBC News as well at that time. So all of that grew out of that effort that started on the lawns of Russ College in Holly Springs, Mississippi during that summer. And you're absolutely right. We had a lot of rehearsals. You guys drove us very hard. As a matter of fact, I can't go it because I gave it the name General. And I call it that from time to time. And but we needed that because had she not done that, I'm not sure we could have pulled it off. And I must say too, Tony, that these teachers really gave us an opportunity to really express ourselves. Because growing up in the South and growing up in the area where that Joyce mentioned earlier, Black kids were taught not to say anything, not to question anything, not to be creative. And so this play gave us the opportunity to do just the opposite. So it's an opportunity for us to really express ourselves in a way that we had not been able to express ourselves before.
Wow. Okay, you're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM. This is me, Joni, normally heard on Mondays at 10 a.m. But we are celebrating MEDGAR, EVERS, and Patrice Lumumba today for 12 hours from 12 noon to midnight today. They are both born on July 2nd, 100 years ago today. And we're very thankful to have three people who were very active, involved either directly or indirectly with MEDGAR EVERS. Joyce, when she was a young lady, and Gloria and Roy very much involved with this play 61 years ago. In a moment, I'm going to ask our young lady, 16 years old now, Zakaria, just played Fannie Lou Hammer. I'm going to ask her in a few minutes to be Fannie Lou Hammer with us for a minute or two. But Zakaria, do you have any questions since you just recently were involved in a play? Any questions for either of the guests you just heard, Roy or Gloria, about doing the play?
I guess my question would have to kind of be centered around theater and exactly what it took for them to kind of analyze and research MEDGAR Evers and what he did, who he was, and to put on this play and to perform it and then travel with it sounds like an amazing opportunity, an amazing thing to do. So I have to ask Mr. Roy, what was it like doing your research and analyzing kind of who MEDGAR Evers was and his character to help you and your castmates be able to portray him and his personality of who he was?
Roy, you want to jump in and answer?
Thank you for that. That's a really very, very important question. With respect to character, I played his son, Daryl Kenyatta, who died, I think, in 2001 and was about 47 years old. I was just a little bit older than him in terms of age, about maybe 4 years older. And so I played the character. I think as I think about your question, it came through improvisation more so than research. In other words, at the time, we did not know, and plus, if you look at the play itself, there are things about the white society, there are things about the guy that actually shot him, the court system with the district attorney, all those things. I think some of the people like Gloria and Debbie may have done a little bit more research than we did. I think, at least from my standpoint, we just basically improvised and talked about it from our perspective, what his death meant to us as young people. And then when we played these characters, for example, I know one of the things that in the play, his mother was talking about how he stood for justice, how he stood for doing the right thing, how he stood for gun violence and peace. And I think I used the term, well, Mom, if Dad was all of this, why was he killed? And then I went on to talk about the fact that I hated the people that killed him. And she said, son, I believe that you shouldn't feel that way. So I think the characters was something that we developed during the course of that summer, sitting there on that lawn at Rutgers College and not having necessarily a lot of specific research. Now, Gloria could have a different take on that. Yeah. I was just 16 at the time, Zakaria. And so you have to understand, as you are now, that a lot of the research I had not, and some of the other young people who played various characters had not been able to do.
Yeah. And of course, MEDGAR Evers was right, had just passed, was just killed a year ago. So he was close to you. Unlike, I'm going to ask Zakaria to jump in for a moment, and we'll have more time after we give her a chance. But she just played Fannie Lou Hammer. And of course, I was amazed to see the play at Kennedy Center on Juneteenth, and all those young people, Fannie Lou Hammer, that was a long time ago, and none of them had any direct experience with her. But Zakaria, I'd like you to perhaps for a few moments on the air, be Fannie Lou Hammer. Maybe quote some of what you did at the Kennedy Center the other week.
Of course, I would love to.
So let's hear it. We have maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Okay. Freedom is not something they're gonna just put in your lap. You got to stand up. I've been out here a long time, and with all these people here, we got to be able to do something. We are tired of so many things. We've been down so long, we ain't got no other way to go but up. Amen.
Fantastic. Fantastic. You know, Zakaria, you know, I'm glad listening to you there, Joni. I was struck by the fact that I did have a chance to see Fannie Lou Hammer up front. I got a chance to meet her. I was there at the convention in 1964. The Freedom Democratic Party, as you know a lot about that, having done the play about her. And she came out to the boardwalk, and because we lived on the boardwalk at that time, and she came out and sang that song, "My Mind Stayed on Freedom," and also the song "This Little Light of Mine."
Light of Mine, yes.
I wanted you to break out in that song because I was thinking about Fannie Lou Hammer when you did that, and then also we just. So for your information, we just did a plaque for Fannie Lou Hammer there in Atlantic City, New Jersey on the boardwalk that was put together by the Mississippi Humanities Council. So she'll be forever honored there for her role that she played at that convention in 1964. And there's a shot of me, by the way, marching on the boardwalk, and a picture of me with Fannie Lou Hammer now is on that permanent marker. So again, that's a wonderful woman, and you just did a great job of performing that piece.
Yeah, and we got to have a little look at you, Zakaria, and you kind of look like her too.
So we're in the future, we're going to make sure that Zakaria gets to meet in person Joyce Ladner and Frank Smith and others who worked directly with Fannie Lou Hammer. But maybe for a minute, because we're going to be running out of time soon, we could spend a minute or two with either Joyce, Roy, or Gloria sharing with Zakaria what Medgar Evers' relationship was with Fannie Lou Hammer. Joyce, do you want to jump in with that?
I don't think they had a particularly close relationship. Miss Hammer joined SNCC. She became a field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And she often said that she chose to be a member of the group of young people rather than joining the NAACP or the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, led by Dr. King, because the young people were not afraid and they would take chances, whereas the older people were more measured and careful and so on in what they did. There's no animosity between them. It's just that she was closer to us in SNCC.
Yes. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left just for general discussion with Roy, Gloria, Joyce, and Zakaria. Roy, do you want to share a little bit about I understand that when the man who assassinated Medgar Evers, I believe you were working at the. Well, tell us about what you witnessed.
Well, the man that was accused of killing Medgar was tried twice, and each time hung jury. He was finally tried again in the 1990s. At the time when he was tried the third time, I was county administrator for Jackson, Mississippi, Hinds County, the largest county in Mississippi. And my responsibility was the detention center. I was also the sheriff's department. And so Baron de la Bethwith, the guy who had been convicted finally, and Miss Evers, again, working hard to make sure that we had the trial and made sure this man was held brought to justice, was in the detention center at the time before he was transferred to Parchman. And there was a policy at the time where a lot of the inmates had unlimited mail privilege. I found out that in the case of Baron de la Beckwith, he was doing a lot of correspondence with his Klan friends and so on and so on. So I just made it very clear to the sheriff that he would only get one piece of mail, that he would not be given the privilege of getting 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 packages a day from his buddies in the Klan and the White Citizen Council and other groups. So it was like a great thing for me to be in a position to say no in a small way. You are not going to get this privilege here, my man, for all the dirty deeds that you've done, i.e. kill the great Medgar Evers, and finally been brought to justice. And I'm not going to give you that sort of privilege while you sit here in the jail waiting to go to punishment. So that was the Larry mentioned that is absolutely true.
Mm. And what was the final outcome of him?
He passed away in Parchment when he was still in Parchment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was 80 years old. He died in prison. He never got out after that. But he did have 30 years on his own before they tried him in 1994. And there's no statue of him in Jackson, but there is a statue of Medgar Evers. Then the statue of Medgar Evers was put up in before the trial even of 94. The statue of Medgar Evers went up in 1992. The airport in Jackson has Medgar Evers' name in it. They put that in 2004. College he went to, Alcorn, has a statue of him. Lots of songs have been written, like by Bob Dylan, Nina Simone, and Phil Oakes. They've been written about him and what he did and the kinds of things he did. So he has the last word, in a sense, over this, over his assassin.
And I think that just goes to what Ernestine Evans talked about when we did the play Seeds of Freedom. You may kill the man, but you can't kill the messenger, and you can't kill the idea, and you can't kill the mission, and you can't kill the passion, and you can't kill this desire for freedom.
And I would just like to say something to Zakaria, because I worked with Fannie Lou Hammer and I met her several times. She was in the same district that Holly Springs was in, and we divided up our groups into congressional districts, and that included Ruleville and Holly Springs in it. And so we had her come and speak to us more than once, but the one time she did come to speak in the church. And I don't know if you were there, Roy. It was October 30th, 1964. It was right in the middle of the presidential campaign. And Fannie Lou Hammer was running on the Freedom Democratic Party ticket.
Yes.
And we were trying to get her on the ballot in that way. And she came to speak on October 30th, 1964, in a town called Blue Mountain, Mississippi. And she brought the house down. She sang. She did everything. She was amazing. I wish somebody could have recorded it. It was so amazing that night the church was burned after she spoke in it.
That's correct.
Right?
Wow.
The church was burned down. And we got together with some people from Ohio, from Akron, Ohio, who came down to rebuild that church, and they were called the Carpenters for Christmas. It's something you could Google, is Carpenters for Christmas. They were students who came down with an African-American contractor to rebuild that church, and the rebuilding of that church was on the front page of the New York Times in early January, like January 2nd. So it was a big deal, you know, when she showed up in a community. People really reacted. And that night in the church, the church was pulsating.
Yes.
If I may go something.
But if I could just jump in, we on WPFW talk a lot about Fannie Lou Hammer. and we have people like Joyce and other people who really knew her. I want to make sure we only have 5 minutes left. So let's just get back to Medgar Evers. Yes.
I say something. I was to have been Mrs. Hammer's biographer, or actually what I was going to do, we agreed that I would simply tape her and edit it. It be her voice. We had a publisher, and then life took over. I came to Washington to teach at Howard in '71, and we never got it done. We traveled we went to Cincinnati to Reverend Shuttlesworth's church, but what I remember most, was Mrs. Hammer being at the 1964 Democratic National Convention. Each of us, several of us were assigned by Marion Wright Edelman to lobby members of the Credentials Committee, and I accompanied Mr. and Mrs. Hartman Turnbull. Mr. Turnbull was a courageous man who was accused by the sheriff of his house burned down, and then the sheriff came out and locked him up for burning his own house down.
Okay, we only have about 3 or 4 minutes left, so I'm sorry,
okay,
Joyce.
Anyway, Mrs. Hammer was spoke before that convention, and when the Credentials Committee convention decided that the Mississippi delegation would remain seated, the white delegation, and that the Freedom Democratic Party would be offered 2 seats. Ms. Hamer said, "We didn't come here for no 2 seats, because all of us is tired." And that's a famous quote now.
Yes.
Indeed.
So eloquently stated.
Okay. Yes, and Dakari is going to be meeting you, Joyce. She's going to learn a lot more about Fannie Lou Hammer, even though she played her beautifully. But we have maybe 3 minutes left. Roy, I'm going to ask you to give some final words about Medgar Evers.
Well, the final word I will have is youth. Medgar was a very young man when he was an activist. That's true of most of the SNCC workers. I think the thing that fascinated me about Medgar when I learned more about him was he was a pioneer. He was kind of like, as Joyce pointed out, he was out there doing work in the 50s alone. When there was no press, when there was no New York Times, there was no Washington Post, anybody covering him. He was just out there in the wilderness doing that work. And to me, that's the greatness of this man, that he had the courage to do this. He was a family man, of course, but he was spending hours away from his family. He was devoted to Myrtle, devoted to his children. I admire that about him. But then he was, as she pointed out, thoroughly dedicated to the movement. His life really was about the movement and a change in Mississippi in a way that people like Caria and that generation after him could enjoy the fruits of what we call democracy in America.
And Roy, what would you say to young people, such as the young lady we have on with us? How could they learn more about Medgar Evers?
I would say,
uh-huh.
Go ahead. At this point in time, talk to people like George Latt and people that knew him personally, because it's important in terms of oral history, right, to get the message not from secondary sources, because there are a lot of people that have written books, and we talked about that. Universities named after him, airports named after him, but to get that personal thing would be immeasurable to Carl, just to have that session with Joyce, so you could find more information directly about his life.
And you also suggested to me that the young people should try to come down for a trip to Mississippi.
Absolutely. I thought that would be a good idea as you talk to people there in D.C., with Frank, who did work in Mississippi, to come to Mississippi. We have these tours all the time. I know I'd be happy to engage you here in Oxford. If you came to do the Oxford, you go to Jacksonville to Museum, which has a lot of stuff on Medgar. So, yeah, that would be an opportunity for young people. The last thing I'll say, and I'll leave it to Gloria, is that the movement was about young people. When I was involved, I was your age and younger. I got involved initially when I was 14. The movement really was about, George was right, it was about young people that made the change in Mississippi and brought about this change in the country and the whole world. Young people.
Okay, we're almost out of time. And Zachary, I want you to think about if you could, before we go out, maybe in 2 minutes, you may want to give another shout out from Fannie Lou Hammer. Gloria, in a minute or less, you have any final words about MEDGAR EVERS?
Final words about MEDGAR EVERS? Well, yeah, I think I would just repeat what has been said, that he was out there kind of alone. He was the first secretary, field secretary for NAACP in Mississippi. That was a pretty bold move.
Okay. And Joyce, you have any final things to share about MEDGAR EVERS and you?
Well, I think that as we enter these dark ages, when our history attempts are being made to wipe out of the history books, people like MEDGAR EVERS, we should be emboldened to carry forth his name and to say his name and to teach young people about him. It's now up to us to do that work.
Absolutely. I want to thank Joyce Ladner, Roy DeBerry, and Gloria Clark so much for joining us. Zachary, I'm going to ask you in a minute if you have a final shout out with Fannie Lou Hammer, but let me just let people know that coming up next is Eugenia Charles, continuing our special programming about, she's going to be talking about Patrice Lumumba with Maurice Carney of Friends of the Congo and Alive Banda of The Future of the Congo. That's talking about Patrice Lumumba, whose birthday is also 100 years ago. He was born on July 2nd, as was MEDGAR EVERS. I want to thank everybody for listening and for helping. Zachary, you have a last shout out with Fannie Lou Hammer. You have something you want to jump in and be her.
Oh, okay. I would love to. Thank you. We praise your name, Father God. Thank you. And I especially want to thank my beautiful brothers and sisters for inviting and welcoming me here to your beautiful church to share some stories of my life in our struggle for freedom here in America. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hammer. I was born in Montgomery County, Mississippi, October 6, 1917. I am the youngest of 20 children, 16 boys and 4 girls. I was born into sharecropping, picking cotton. My folks were sharecroppers, and the more kids you had, the more cotton y'all could pick as a family. But seemed like with all the cotton we picked, we wasn't no better off than anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
She's 16 years old, and where do you go to school?
Benjamin Banneker Academic High School.
Beautiful.
So we look forward to having this wonderful young lady on with us, or we look forward, Joyce, to you meeting her. And maybe we can get the whole team to go down to Mississippi. We shall see.
We would love to have you.
But that is the end of our time. Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Roy. And
thank you.
Victoria. We're going to go out again with Fannie Lou Hammer singing This Little Light of Mine.